I kind of feel like the Western world needs to stop preoccupying themselves with foreign affairs, because right now they don't even know who they are. Yo, what's happening, Cucumber Squad? Right, bars, welcome to the very first episode of the Fable Show. So I've now changed the channel somewhat. I will be putting out a video with regards to the details of that in terms of what type of content I will be dropping, when and why. If you want a slight sneak preview of that, you can actually take a look at the cover banner on my channel. I'm going to still be doing the music, so please do not worry. I will be still dropping here and there during the week, but I'm going to be dedicating predominantly music reactions to Friday and Saturday. I'm going to still give you a week's worth of reactions. So if I had to do 2 a day, I would be giving you 10 reactions in a week from a Monday to a Friday. And on the Friday, I'll be dropping 5 reactions. Saturday, I'll be dropping 5 reactions. Sunday, I'm taking a break. And then on Monday and Tuesday, we're doing a bit of a talk show on topics that I really find interesting, that I want to sort of share with you guys. Wednesday, Thursday, an entertainment segment, right? Entertainment and news. And then Friday and Saturday, we're going to be doing music. And then in between that, I will drop other reactions, so please do not stress. I just wanted to change it up a little bit, as it's becoming very unsustainable to run a channel based purely on just music reactions due to copyrights and things like that. And I also think that I can do a little bit more than just music. Right. So, for my very first video under the Fable Show, I would like to actually chat about what actually happened this weekend in Afghanistan. As you guys know, have made headline news, pretty historic moment for the world and for the USA. The attempted withdrawal of the US allies and the embassy staff and things like that, and what exactly and how exactly it went wrong. I will be chatting a little bit later with regards to what I felt went wrong, but I'd like to sort of begin with the fact that there's a lot of blaming going around at the moment. So, you know, the Democrats are blaming the Republicans are blaming the Democrats, people are blaming Donald Trump is blaming Biden's blaming. In my personal opinion, from this blame game perspective, it's neither of their fault. It's not Biden's fault, it's not Trump's fault, it's not Obama's fault. It may be a little bit of Bush's fault. You know, he does sort of stand to take the responsibility for actually invading Iraq in the very first place. But in that sort of circumstance, with 9/11, I think any US president would have actually made that call after over 3,000 of its people actually died. So what I'd like to do is, just so we get a little bit of a context before I get into what's happened over the weekend and how I feel that this entire strategy with pulling out the troops was kind of botched in a way. I think it's important to go into a little bit of a loose history on what actually happened in the region. It's important so that you can sort of understand how we got to this point, why we got to this point, what was achieved, what wasn't achieved, and was it all worth it at the end of the day. So I've got a couple of notes which I'm going to be reading from here. So bear with me, I'm going to make it very, very quick. I've literally just bullet pointed a couple of things going throughout the years so you understand the history a little bit better, right? So let's start from the very beginning, 9/11 attack in the USA. That was 2001. So the attack on the Twin Towers happened, 3,300 people die. The state is in a complete state of emergency and panic. George W. Bush orders a coalition attack on Afghanistan very, very shortly after that, after they had gotten the information that it was Al-Qaeda linked and Taliban linked. US along with British allies begin their bombing campaign against Al-Qaeda and Taliban in Afghanistan. Right? Again, still within 2001, Taliban suffers major losses and heavily retreats. A lot of Al-Qaeda heads are killed and imprisoned, but bin Laden escapes. Now that's the man that the US was actually after. They were after bin Laden because he masterminded the entire attack on the 9/11 towers. allegedly, at least, I know a lot of people have conspiracy theories that say that it was an inside job or whatever else. I do not subscribe to any of those. There's a larger conversation to be had with regards to America sort of like funding terrorist groups and things like that, but that's possibly in another video, right? So the Taliban suffer losses. This is all in the same year. Bin Laden escapes, Al-Qaeda heads are killed, and then and obviously Bin Laden, we find him many years later in Pakistan. In the same year, Taliban collapses. Within 2001, the Taliban regime the Taliban organization pretty much collapses, which leads us into 2002. The battle continues, but there wasn't really a broadening of the war. Like, the war didn't really escalate further from 2001. It kind of just maintained a little bit. The US also started turning their attentions towards Saddam Hussein in Iraq. Now, that is a completely different topic, but that I kind of feel George W. Bush had a lot to do with that, and shares a lot of the blame in that. Specifically, when you're already fighting a war, you're already in a country, destabilizing a country, due to terrorist organizations, things like that, and then all of a sudden you sort of do like a detraction and you start focusing on Iraq now with the weapons of mass destruction, and you all know how that sort of landed up. Everybody knows what happened there. That's just a story for another day. Bush then orders, this is still within 2002, Bush orders the reconstruction of Afghanistan and tries to establish a reconstruction model framework with the United Nations. Now, this is obviously a good thing when you go into somebody else's country on a war campaign and you start, sort of destroying the entire thing. The fact that they wanted to reconstruct and they were committed to sort of rebuilding, and I mean, obviously there were American interests here as well. They obviously used American companies, which America benefits from as well. But for the most part, they were trying to help the civilians and help Afghanistan get back sort of on its feet. Not that it ever was on its feet, but for the very first time, get back on its feet. Right? So that all happened in 2002. They decide they're going to do a reconstruction model. In 2003, the major combat in Afghanistan is pretty much declared over. So they say, okay, well, the major battle's pretty much declared over. We've pushed them far. The American troops and the British troops have pushed them far enough, far back enough, and they can sort of maintain this, and we'll do the fighting on the outskirts while we sort of rebuild Afghanistan in the meantime. In 2004, a democratic constitution was developed for Afghanistan and its people. In the same year, a new president called Karzai is democratically elected. Now, this was historic. This was a major thing for Afghanistan, because this was the very first time that they had an electoral process whereby civilians actually went out and voted for a candidate, and they had a democratic election, which I thought was phenomenal that they actually did that. So America, when people say what was achieved, quite a few things were achieved, but we're only at 2004 right now. Things do go up and down quite a bit. In this year, right, so historic, they vote for a new president. 2004, Bin Laden surfaces again with the videotape. I'm pretty sure everybody will remember this, the videotape emerging, where he kind of taunts the USA, taunts America, plays off with the propaganda and things like that. And still, at this point, Bin Laden's nobody knows where he is. The intelligence services are still trying to find out where he is. He's not in Afghanistan. He may have been in Pakistan, but they didn't know, or he was on the run, basically. 2004 and 2005, towards the end of 2004, 2005, Afghanistan starts to experience a semblance of democracy. They start to feel a little bit of what freedom is like. Under Taliban and Al-Qaeda rule, women don't have rights. Women have to be completely burqa'd up. Women are not allowed to be educated, not allowed to go to schools, not allowed to hold jobs. It's a very, very tyrannical regime. And for the first time, they sort of get a breath of fresh air from that sort of hellish type sort of life, essentially. Which then leads us into 2006. Now, this is what happens. This whole war has always been going up, down, up, down, up, down, and this is why America stayed in that region for 2 decades. Now, 2006, Afghanistan experienced a bloody resurgence. So what actually happens, they experience a major number of suicide attacks on the people and US bases and the Afghan government. So obviously the Taliban start fighting this guerrilla warfare, using terrorist tactics as well. In the same year, they start to see some cracks in the US-led coalition as well with regards to NATO and who should be doing what and how they should be fighting and whether they should commit more troops. So it starts becoming a lot more convoluted, a lot more complex. America then recommits combat forces to fight the Taliban once again. Now in 2006, they recommit more troops to fight the Taliban once again because the resurgence was getting quite heavy. A major Taliban commander gets killed by the US, Afghan and NATO forces in Pakistan, which causes the rise of further attacks on Afghanistan. Obviously, these revenge attacks by Taliban and Al-Qaeda, now these rise up. Now what happens after that? In 2008, there were collateral killings that mounted as civilians are killed in the crossfire by the US and Taliban, right? So now, because the war started raging, it started sparking off quite heavily again. America were, firing off from their ships, and in the crossfire, a couple of civilians had died. Not a couple, quite a lot of civilians had died, right? Taliban obviously using this as propaganda against the USA, saying that they don't actually care about the Afghani people, and that they are actually killing the Afghani people now. So obviously, terrorist organizations will always use that kind of propaganda against, the West or any sort of Western coalition. Now, in 2009, right, now we're not even at a decade of this thing yet, Obama's elected and he inherits the Afghan war and recommits to Afghanistan by sending even more troops to the war zone. He also announces a strategy in dealing with the situation. So now he's saying, okay, we can't now pull out because now we've just, we're dealing with this deadly resurgence now. We're dealing with suicide attacks and things like that. It's now, we are kind of at a fever pitch. So we need to actually recommit into Afghanistan to bring this all under control, but it needs a new strategy. Now, what Obama's new strategy basically was, he wanted actually to just sort of divide the responsibilities and the tasks of the coalition. So he was saying that the US would deal with security and the fighting as a whole. The US would deal with that and with training the Afghan military as well, right? That basically his plan was to sort of push the responsibility away from the USA onto the Afghani government and say, you guys need to handle that. And that's why he sort of split that and he said, okay, so we'll deal with the fighting and NATO can deal with NATO and the allies being Britain and everybody else. You guys deal with aid, you guys deal with reconstruction, with aid to the civilians, and anything that is non-military based, you guys can deal with. So at least like that, they sort of split the responsibilities and decided that this would be easier. Let us do the fighting because it was kind of it's led by us. So let us do the dirty work while you guys just come in the background and provide aid to Afghanistan while we do this. Not a terrible plan, I must say. The US then launched another major offensive. This is still within 2009, another major offensive in South Afghanistan. In the same year, another Afghan president is elected at the same time. So they had further elections again while the US was recommitting quite heavily into fighting the battle again. Obama then, when this election was going on, Obama then recommits a further 30,000 troops, still within 2009, to the region, this time to assist, supply and train Afghan forces so that they are able to protect themselves. Now that was part of obviously his plan to say like there needs to be an end point to this war at some point, and we really do need to now start pushing the responsibility onto Afghanistan, onto the government. We've already established a constitution, we've established a semblance of democracy, we've established a government, we've helped them establish a military. We're going to train the military, we're going to give them armaments, we're going to give them munitions, we're going to give them equipment and all of that kind of thing so that they can protect themselves. Up until this point, there was quite a big army. It was 300,000 strong with American technology, American airplanes, Humvees, weaponry, everything. America had committed billions and billions and billions of dollars into Afghanistan to actually allow them to take the reins. But there is a major factor here, which I will talk a little bit later, with why it all failed, to why you see what's going on right now. But anyway, so that was still within 2009. In 2010, the US and NATO started drawing up a transitional timeline. So they started saying, okay, 2010, we're starting to see that, okay, that we're being pretty successful with training these troops. We've given them everything that they need. Let's now start drawing a timeline so we can leave. America never wanted to stay that long in Afghanistan. They were kind of just consistently drawn into that war. But now 2010, they say, okay, we need to start committing to leave Afghanistan. We know for a fact that bin Laden is now no longer in Afghanistan. We've pushed them out quite far enough. We'll keep obviously the intelligence agencies will keep their ear on the ground and will continue their work to bring bin Laden to justice, but we can start now creating a timeline where we can start letting go of Afghanistan. In 2011, as everybody knows, Osama bin Laden was found in Pakistan and he was killed. And that was basically mission accomplished for America. Now, that moment there was the entirety of the Afghan war. That basically sums up what the Afghan war actually should have been. It was just get in there, find the people who caused the deaths of 3,300 Americans in the USA, kill those people, and get out. War never ever pans out the way you want it though, but at least on that side of things, they brought him to justice, they killed the man, and at least that was mission done after that. After this, Obama announces a troops drawdown whereby he plans to withdraw 30,000 troops from the region. Now this is great because now he says, okay, we've accomplished the mission, we now need to start withdrawing these troops from Afghanistan, and we're pretty sure that Afghanistan can sort of hold their own. In 2011-2012, talks and negotiations were meant to be held with the Taliban, but fail, and then tensions rise once again. Do you see this? Do you see this sort of like yo-yo effect where it's like it calms down, it rises again. It calms down, it rises again. It's just, that was Afghanistan pretty much in a nutshell. So that all fails in 2011-2012. 2013, Afghan security take over and is now completed. So now the Afghanistan military and the Afghanistan government take over the security over their country, but still being assisted by the USA majorly, specifically with air support and things like that. There are still major elements of US assistance that was helping the Afghan government. And I also think that there were major cracks in the military and the Afghani government, and there was a lot of corruption in the Afghani government, there was a lot of corruption in the Afghani military, essentially. And you were also dealing with people who really weren't too concerned with actually defending their own country and their own people. They were demoralized, and never really felt that it was a country worth fighting for, which is crazy. But that was in 2013. 2014, Obama announces troop withdrawal. So Obama now announces that he's going to withdraw troops, and this would obviously happen gradually. It's going to happen gradually between 2014, 2015, 2016. His aim was to get all of the troops out of Afghanistan by 2016. Right. Now, that was gradually happening, but for the most part, not as quickly as he had hoped because of many other external factors that was happening on the ground. And then in 2017, Trump now in office, he now inherits this war. He then launches an attack on the Islamic State, which is ISIS, by dropping the mother of all bombs, the Moab, on a strategic target in Afghanistan. Right, so obviously that they had gotten intel that they were sort of rising up in that particular region, and then he dropped a Moab on those sort of that. It was, I think it was an underground network system in the region, which then again rises tensions again, yet again, yo-yo effect. Now we're talking about, this is now the third administration that this conflict has now changed hands. Trump then signals that this war is going to continue. It's like it's going to be prolonged. So the whole sort of ambitions of Obama to actually have sort of pulled out of Afghanistan by 2016, that unfortunately all falls apart. And you can't even blame Trump for that, because it was just that, you know, it was all rising up again. So it's really, it's very difficult to pinpoint and to blame any of the administrations for this. Like it's very difficult because it gets very complicated. In 2018, Taliban then carry out a series of bold terrorist attacks in Kabul that kill many people amid the US escalation of war. So now, while the US is now under Donald Trump is escalating the war in Afghanistan because of the Islamic State, the Taliban then carry out a series of bold terrorist attacks, which again just engulfs America straight back into the war once again. In 2019, the US-Taliban peace talks take place once again. So in 2019, they try again with Donald Trump to try and bring to talks, try and have some peace talks, to try and get a bit more stability again. And then Trump then calls off the peace talks after a US soldier was killed in the Taliban attacks, which is completely understandable. You kill one of our own, all bets are off. That's basically how you deal with terrorists. And he calls off the talks and says, no, if you kill one of our own, we're back at it. And then that all sort of falls apart. Right? In 2020, US and Taliban signed a deal on a path to peace. Obviously, because the war had reached a stalemate, essentially. No one was getting anywhere. You were dealing with guerrilla warfare, and you're dealing with sort of like factions of militias and things like that. Always very hard war to fight. We've learned that in Vietnam. You can't fight an enemy you can't see. And it came to a point where this is basically not working. We're coming to a stalemate. We really just need to withdraw from Afghanistan now. We don't want to put any of our children and our resources and all of that back into Afghanistan. It's been almost 2 decades now, and Trump decides that now, it's time to now leave Afghanistan and remove the troops. If we haven't reached a level of stability, a civil, stable state by this point, if we haven't done it in 2 decades, we're not going to do it in 3 or 4 or 5. It's just not going to happen. So Trump then announces a troop withdrawal from the region in November of 2020. As he's set to leave office, he decides that, okay, we are going to withdraw troops. I'm not entirely sure why he had said that when the new administration was coming in. But in 2021, Biden comes into office and inherits the conflict, which is now the 4th administration that comes in and inherits the conflict, but then decides to stick to the Donald Trump plan and withdraw the troops by September the 11th of 2021, which brings us to right now, this moment. What actually happened? Biden decides that, okay, we're going to pull out all of the troops. We're going to do this as, I think the plan was to do it sort of gradually, but I think it actually happened a little bit quicker than it should have been. And I think there were a lot of miscalculations, specifically when you're drawing out the most important people you want to protect. Obviously, the American citizens that are there assisting America, the people that are delegates in the embassies and things like that. Those kind of people, there should have been a strategy to remove those people first, to also remove Afghani people that were allies to America, that were helping them on the ground with intel, translations, and all that kind of thing. They should have been protected first and foremost. Get them out, and then afterwards start withdrawing the troops. But it kind of, some odd reason, went the other way around, and I don't know how they didn't see that this was going to happen. Now, the strategy was a bit weird, and I think it was weird because there was a major miscalculation in terms of how strong they thought the Taliban were and how strong the Taliban actually were, right? So when they started retreating, when they started taking all of their troops out, at least the Taliban effectively launched a blitzkrieg. The German strategy of the moment they start retreating, we attack it instantaneously, fast. And they were starting to take back cities at a rapid rate. Now, Bin Laden, and I don't know how this intelligence services didn't see this, Biden sort of thought like, and his intelligence agencies thought like there was no ways that the Taliban was going to take this over from a Friday to a Monday. And that's exactly what happened. From a Friday to a Monday, they pretty much took over the entirety of Afghanistan, right? That was a major miscalculation by the generals. There was a major miscalculation by the intelligence agencies. And it was specifically something that Biden said was not going to happen and then happened. So for me, with regards to like taking the troops out of Afghanistan, I completely agreed with that. You cannot just sit there and commit American lives, American resources, American taxpayer dollars to a war that's just never ending. This is not ever going to end. They can't stay there indefinitely. If we haven't achieved anything in sort of 2 decades, we're never going to achieve it. So 100% I agree with the removal of America from the equation and saying Afghanistan needs to stand on their own 2 feet. They need to deal with their own security. They now need to, we assisted you on building a democracy, assisted you on a constitution, on building your army, which is 3 times bigger than the Taliban army and has far greater equipment and things like that. But I think the one thing that they didn't kind of realize is how unwilling the Afghan people and the Afghan military, how unwilling they were to fight for their own people. They literally gave up the country without a fight. Not even a bullet was fired in most cases. They literally surrendered and gave up, which then gave all of that equipment and all of those resources and assets. They just pretty much gifted it to the Taliban. They took over the whole of Afghanistan without a fight. By the time they had reached Kabul, the president just decided, well, he's going to up and leave, which is a super cowardly act, because the captain should go down with the ship. But he decided, no. He veiled it under as like, there'll be more bloodshed if I stay around. No, you were just too scared, and you left your people in the turmoil that it was, right? So it's a very sad situation because right now, you are getting Taliban that are saying that, they are committing to the people and they're not going to be tyrants, and women, can still do their own things, but they haven't made any promises that there won't be any punishments for normal things like women getting an education or women not wearing a burqa. I mean, they're a tyrannical regime. So people are obviously very nervous. People are very panicked. What you saw in the Kabul airport was absolutely madness. Civilians trying to get out. I mean, even with planes that were still on the runway, people were jumping on the planes, and as it took off, people were falling to their deaths. It just goes to show the level of panic, the level of desperation. I feel very sorry for the Afghan people. I feel very sorry, for the women of Afghanistan, more specifically, right? Because their rights will be taken away almost surely. A very hardline, radical, sort of dark age sort of mentality is going to come in to the country again with public executions and punishments and things like that, which is very, very sad. Taliban isn't an organization to be trusted. Although they are sort of veiling it as we want the civilians to know that we come with peace and things like that. That's not something that they've shown in the past, and the people don't trust that right now. But the actual strategy of the way this was handled was sad, because the chaos and the panic that ensued was completely avoidable. Surely, the intelligence agencies and Joe Biden's team should have known that, and in certain instances were warned that this would have happened. And I kind of think that they sort of overlooked that. And I think that they were gunning for a very quick political victory, and it kind of backfired. And a lot of people are calling it, sort of Biden's Saigon, with, people being airlifted from the embassy and things like that. I can understand why they say like that, because the images and what's coming out from Kabul are very much like that. But it's actually very sad, sort of just to conclude this video, it's sad that the US has reached the stage after all of the sacrifice, all of the money, all of the blood, sweat, and tears in Afghanistan. Because if you sort of bring it down to what was achieved in Afghanistan in 20 years that they were in that region, what you can really, all you can really say is that they got Osama bin Laden. Because right now, Afghanistan is right back where it started. And 20 years of money, 20 years of training, 20 years of trying to develop a democracy, 20 years of trying to develop a stable country, all fell to nothing. It fell back to square one, which is very, very, very sad to see, and obviously is reminiscent of Vietnam. A war for absolutely nothing. And this is why I think America should just not engage in these wars anymore. And sure, America's got military bases all over the world, but they're not fighting in those countries. Those countries are they are able to protect themselves, like Japan, Germany, and a plethora of different countries have got US bases in them, but they're not fighting those countries. Those countries are able to defend themselves. And the very sad part over here is that Afghanistan, its people, its government were not willing to defend their country. They weren't willing to do it. The moment there was even the slightest resistance, they upped and left their people in the turmoil that you see today. So what you can conclude is that after all of the sacrifice, and after all of the death, after all of the American children lost, after all of the NATO children lost, I think it's a big lesson for America and the coalition to say that if a country is not willing to stand on its own 2 feet, don't be there. Don't be there, right? A country needs to be willing to defend its own borders, to defend its own people. And if it's not willing to do that, why should America hold that responsibility? I get the fact that they went in, but they went into a country that was already completely destabilized and a terrorist hellhole anyway, right? So they tried to bring freedom, and they tried to bring a Western idea, a Western standard of democracy to a country that never really wanted it. And I think it's a big lesson for the Western world to understand that. And if you ask me, I kind of feel like the Western world needs to stop preoccupying themselves with foreign affairs, because right now they don't even know who they are. They don't even know their standing in the world at the moment. They've got so much to deal with domestically that they cannot afford to deal with foreign aspects of the world. The Western world has unfortunately gotten to a point that they don't understand or acknowledge or know what they are anymore, what they stand for anymore, what their morals are anymore. They are heavily polarized, and while you are battling within your own house, I don't think it's a good idea to start looking abroad. Anyway, you guys let me know what you think. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you enjoyed this as different content. Just thought of something that I wanted to just chat to you a little bit about. And please put your comments down below, and let's have a discussion around this. And yeah, so thank you for watching the very first show of the Fable show, essentially. Please let me know as these shows go on, it will get better. My delivery will get a little bit better. I hope you enjoyed that though. And I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.